today we have the wonderful privilege of having the CEO of the Atu group of companies here. And it almost sounds like someone, sneezed. So he will definitely explain to you, Atu, he will tell you exactly what it is that they do. But can we give a life work leadership welcome to Wouter Snyman? So maybe, Wouter, we can start off there. And thank you, of course, for agreeing to come and talk to us. What is Atu? What are you guys all about? This is now your marketing, minute or two to sell yourselves.
Thanks, Ron. What a blessing it is to be here. You can't ask any difficult questions after that session to follow up from what Pastor Neville just shared with us. How powerful is that? At the core, we are a financial services company. When we started our business, we established a very definite core purpose as to what we wanted to do. And that was to make ordinary people millionaires and make millionaires financially independent. So if I had to ask you a quick question, are you a millionaire? You would answer in one of two ways, and most people say no. Because they think I refer to their bank balance, and I'm not. So at the start of our business, God created this vision that we needed to change people's lives by touching their finances, but we couldn't do that if we didn't have the opportunity to change them from a poverty mindset to abundance. Because nothing in life, everything that we see around us, we create twice. First in our mind, and then the second way is in real life. And if we couldn't touch people's minds, so they always think I talk about their purses, means while we're talking and referring to them about their minds. So that's really what we do. We've got a cradle-to-grave business, so when a baby's born, we put them on a medical aid. Someone dies, we deal with their estate and anything in between. All matters related to finance.
How many people are you guys now, more or less?
About 600 people in the business.
And you mainly operate across South Africa, or you're in the neighboring countries already?
We serve clients in neighboring countries in Africa, but our staff is mostly in South Africa, yeah.
How did you get to the name?
I'm a born and bred Free Stater, so I, to my absolute dismay, sometimes still I do support the Cheetahs. So I'm.
Now that's a man of faith.
I have the signed jersey in my office, 2016 Currie Cup champion in Pretoria. That's just to annoy the Blue Bulls, just to say we've got it. But so I was the idea was born when I was around about 11, 12 years old, and I used to play soccer with my local friends.
You were born when you were 11 or 12 years old?
No, when I was born.
That's a story.
So I played soccer with my local friends, and when they scored a goal, they would shout in unison, Atu, in exuberation. So they celebrated goals being scored, and when I started a business, I want Snyman and Wouter was taken, so I thought, let's try something else. And the two exuberant celebration cry was something that came to mind, and we don't score goals, physical goals. We help clients achieve their financial goals. So that's the meaning of the name.
Great. No, I like that. But if we go back to the early days, maybe, and you mentioned the Free State, so where we know, that growing up in the Free State, English is only used in self-defense, in most cases. But maybe tell us a bit about those first 25 years, the first quarter of your life, and how did that plan out?
Yeah, I'm a born and bred Free Stater, born in a small town called Bothaville, and grew up in Viljoenskroon, which was mostly known for two things, the Golfer Fulton Alum, and in the very first elections, the AWB just tried to keep left people from voting. So that was what we were known for. Wasn't a great memory, but I had some wonderful times. Grew up in a single mom home from the age of 12. My mom was a hairdresser, a wonderful, wonderful lady, and my mentor and hero. She taught me most of the leadership skills that I think I have today in terms of humility and the ability to serve people, because that's what hairdressers do. Very passionate person. My dad was an alcoholic, So when I chose a career, I had to pick one of the two, and I thought being an entrepreneur, not an alcoholic, would be a good career to follow. I had some wonderful, wonderful times, but I was challenged at a point in my life where I saw my father figure in terms of all his failures, and I had to try and identify as to who I was as an individual. And I mean, God spoke to me from an early age in terms of different ways, never directly, but through people and the interactions I had with them. And at the age of 13, I found my passion in life. When my folks were divorced, I had to literally take over the finances, because as a hairdresser, one of the skills my mom didn't have was managing finances. And I remember vividly going to the bank manager to asking about this concept of a home loan. And well, firstly, as a 13-year-old, you don't get an appointment with a bank manager. I don't know whether any of you've tried it, because they were like the pastor and the guy that owned the bottle store. They kind of right there at the top. I had to get through his PA. And that's where my love of finances came about. And mostly it was driven by the fact that I remember vividly asking my mom whether I could have North Star tackies. Now, for those of you that's under 40, you might not know what North Star tackies is, but that's the Nike of today. And she said to me, we can't afford it. And I made a pact with myself that my kids would never ever go through what I went through. And sometimes in life we make choices for good and bad reasons. It potentially can drive good results, and we need to own up to those. And later in life, and we'll talk maybe about that, I had to own up to the mistakes that I made in terms of early life choices, even though I thought it was a good thing to do, not to have my kids and my family suffer through what we did. And I tried to do the opposite of what my dad did.
It sounds like your training in the school of life started, at an early age. After school, in university, worth mentioning?
Yeah, absolutely. I went to the PAKA, Potchefstroom University for Christian Higher Education, as it was known at the time, or in Afrikaans Christelike Hoër Onderwys, Kook, Hamburger en Ontug. I first had the privilege to go to the army in the late 80s, and I say privilege, even though I don't think we fully understood at the time what we got into. It allowed me to grow up in a sense that I could find truly how I could serve people through tough times. I mean, I think as 18-year-olds, we saw things that you don't generally want your kids to go through. My daughter's 19 now. I can never imagine she would have gone through that. But it left a lasting impression on me in terms of the impact of people, not of color, of people. I went to Potch. I studied. Initially, I wanted to do medicine. I was in medical forces because I had a passion for it. And so I applied for Koffsies Bloemfontein for medicine, and they took a while to approve. And then I thought I'll do a BSc at Potch, and I did that for the first day. And then I found it a bit difficult and challenging, and I thought, let me switch courses on the second day. And closest to BSc was pharmacy, so I studied that for a full day and realized that was really not in my comfort zone. And going home after, or to my res, and I asked my roommate, what are you studying? And he said, BCom. And I said, how is that? He says, wonderful, beautiful girls. So I studied BCom from the third day onwards, and that kind of worked out for me.
So talking about beautiful girls, somewhere along the line you met your wife. How long have you guys been married? And remember, we are recording, so she might just end up hearing, what you're about to say.
Yeah, her best friend, who I had a serious crush on at the time, 30 years ago, introduced me to Advarsity. I was a third-year student. She was in the first year. I was in the student council, so that wasn't really the ethical way to date a first-year student, but I vividly remember seeing her sit on a kind of a bench, and I can still to this day remember what she wore. And she challenges me on that, even though she's got a better memory. I vividly remember that picture. So we've been together for 30. We had to get married, I've got to confess. At a stage, she said, if you don't marry me now, I'm going to leave you. So I had to get married to her. It was a wonderful, wonderful decision. I've got 2 kids, a beautiful daughter of 20, Anshin, studying education at Tux, and I've got a son, 16, going on 26. In terms of knowledge, he's at Office, grade 10.
Now, seeing that the topic of the day is humility, has the Lord ever used your wife or maybe your children, to keep you humble?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they do. So I've got two outgoing personality kids. My daughter's a drama queen, loves the art, follows after my mom, who's not just a wonderful hairdresser, but a beautiful painter. And if you visit our offices, you'll see a painting scattered across our office. And so she often reminds me of all the things that, as a right-brained person, I aspire to be, and keeps me humble. My 16-year-old son is unfortunately gifted with a 12-pack. So we've got an understanding that at the beach he would never take off his shirt, because it just is not honoring your dad in that way. So they've got wonderful ways of keeping you reminded of where you come from and what you need to do. And sometimes I think the challenges are seeing some of the things that you think you've done wrong, and you see them reflected in their lives and how beautiful it is.
So your corporate career was very successful, and you reached a point where you could even buy that Porsche. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that journey after university and starting this career and getting that Porsche?
So I was weird from a young age. So in the Free State, as a boy of 12, 13, you dream of tractors, Ford, John Deere, all those kinds. I dreamt of driving a Porsche. Somehow that was just a reflection, I suppose, of success and having made it. So I completed in actual fact, I completed 2 degrees in 4 years at varsity. I started with a BCom in informatics purely because I didn't know what to do. Loved the accounting part, and did a BCom accounts at the same time. I only found out afterwards you couldn't do that, and when I had to graduate, they asked me which degree would you want, because I had to do it at the same time. It was a bit of a clerical error on their side. And I entered banking. So I got my career guidance from a wonderful career guidance counselor called Wilbur Smith. Wrote a number of wonderful books, and I was an early reader. So I read one of these books where he spoke about a merchant banker. And this guy was filthy rich, flew around in his own plane, and had wonderful, beautiful women swooning around him. He had an MBA from Oxford or Cambridge, and he was very attractive. So I thought, well, 4 out of 5 ain't bad. So I decided I was going to become a merchant banker, and I became one. So my first half of my career was in banking, in the finance area, and I eventually headed up the northern region for the Standard Corporate and Merchant Bank. And then I left banking to join in a startup insurance company. I was one of the founding franchise life directors for the Discovery Life Group 20 years ago when they started. I started here in Pretoria, and it was a wonderful journey with really innovative, game-changing individuals. Learned a lot from them up until 2009, and at that point in time for about 3 odd years, I've had this calling on me to change careers, not knowing what I wanted to do. And I suppose it came to a point where literally in the business lounge in Cape Town, flying back from a launch of a product with one of the executive directors of Discovery Group, I literally sat down and told him I was going to resign the next day. And what led up to that is my daughter was 9 at the time. I used to leave at home at 4 in the morning, got home at 9 at night. And I used to see them awake over weekends. And I just realized that this burning ambition to create wealth at the age of 13, because my dad failed us, I thought so. I suppose I did all the wrong things, because I was chasing after wealth and fame and maybe titles. I ended up heading the sales and marketing for the Discovery Group. I had a sales budget of 9 billion per annum, and we exceeded those handsomely. just to the point where my 9-year-old, that one night that she was still awake at 9, she just shook me as I did the fatherly thing to go spend some time with her before she fell asleep. She said to me while I was sitting there, she just shook me and said, "Dad, where are you?" I said, "I'm here." And she said, "But you're not," because I wasn't. I was still at work. And that changed my life. And I resigned.
Yeah, I think the Lord often uses instances or difficulties or challenging circumstances quite often to maybe get us to a halt and just to hold up that stop sign and say, reassess. Yes, the Porsche's in the garage, but what are the real priorities and what is it really about? It's an incredible story. Tell us, when did Jesus in all of this become a reality to you?
So I was born in a Christian house, and then I read a story of someone that said that, being born in a Christian house, you can just be glad you weren't born in a garage because you wouldn't have been in a car. So I realized that, that's not where it starts. So for my life, I've always been in that environment. But I think as a young boy growing up without a father and without the father figure, I started challenging the status quo, and I couldn't accept that this was the answer. And I had this yearning and longing for just belonging. I suppose I faced the same rejection that Pastor Neville was talking about, because a lot of us, a father figure is a representation of God, and God showed him in so many ways through my mom and people around me, and leading me through this difficult times. And I realized that you can't know light if you haven't experienced darkness. It's because that contrast in life is sometimes what makes us grow. Some of the greatest business leaders in the world love challenges. They love problems. Yet when you talk to some people, they complain about problems. So I realized that, to me, an answer is that I could only lose myself in everything around me except for the fact that God gave me some real peace of mind. And that's I can't tell you the exact date as such, but as a young boy, I grew to understand that the Lord truly loved me, not because of all the things I did right, but I had to understand grace. And it was a difficult journey because I never understood in my life before. So that was kind of a journey for me. And it really came to fruition in my military days when I saw people die around me, literally, that I loved. And I had to ask serious questions as to what was this about, only to understand that God's love for me will never die, even though people around us might, people that we love, and we don't understand the purpose of that. So it was a journey for me.
Was there in your family life, or perhaps in business, somewhere along this journey, a dilemma, of sorts you faced that maybe challenged you on the topic of humility, and before you share the lesson and the outcome, with us, we normally have a practice here at LifeWork that, because we have some very intelligent people in the room, so we would like to, put their test or their skills to the test. If you don't mind just sharing a little bit of that dilemma or a difficult situation with us, and then we put it out to them, and we allow for a bit of feedback, and then, of course, you can share with us what the outcome was.
Yeah, I suppose chasing after these dreams that I had, trying to chase after, I suppose, external things to satisfy myself in terms of trying to achieve goals and being ego-driven to a large degree. When I had a point at which I had to decide to change careers, and I went, the CEO of the company was Standard Corporate Merchant Bank, so he was a well-known business figure. I went to him and I said, "Listen, I've got a new opportunity that came about." And this guy was quite a tough businessman, and he started swearing at me like a trooper. Those days you had these secretaries sitting at their offices, almost like the military type environment. When I got out of his office, every one of them disappeared. And this is a guy that I looked up for guidance and counseling, and he gave me exactly the opposite. And I'd struggled to deal with it. I mean, I couldn't go to anyone. I didn't have a father or someone that I could really trust with this really massive decision I had to make. I was one of the youngest executive team members at the time in the country. I headed up the northern region. I was in my late 20s, and looked after companies like Telkom and Ford Motor Company, Daimler Chrysler at the time. So I thought I had it made, and then I was challenged with this idea that this wasn't it. And I had to deal with that kind of rejection, once again, from someone that I trusted and valued in terms of their perspective.
Okay, so you face this crossroad, so to speak, and you went to seek advice from a mentor, and he chose not to give you any positive feedback. I guess one could call it constructive, destructive rather. And then you still had this choice to do. Now, maybe at the groups, around the tables, you're in this same situation. There's a difficult decision. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the difficult decision?
Yeah, so I had to make the career choice in terms of moving from a well-established position that that was my life's dream. It was my vision created. I was elected as one of, they had exchange students, so I literally, in terms of working an arrangement to work in a merchant bank in London, this was like the top prize in the company of a couple of thousand people, and I was elected to do that. And in the midst of that, I said, listen, I don't think I can take it, because ethically I don't believe, because I've got this dilemma. I have an opportunity that I want to pursue, and what do I do?
So you've climbed the corporate ladder, you have the office on the corner with a view, and name on the door, and you believe there's another opportunity. Should you go for it? Shouldn't you? Let's take a few minutes around the table. How would you have dealt with that situation, especially after getting that negative feedback? What would you have done in his shoes? What should he have done? Looks like... He's bailing his wife out. He heard a call of distress. Thanks, Werner.
So, you saw me climb in. Yeah, I think we, as a combination, we had a couple of nice ideas. So the first thing we said, it's your vision. It's not his. Secondly, we don't look for their approval. You're looking for God's approval. Practically, you're in the world. You trusted this guy. It took you back to your father's scenario. Here you experience this again. So one of the suggestions is that you just love this guy. If you're going to resign, you're nothing of him anymore. He's got nothing on you. So what we'll say, practically what we said, write him a letter. Because if you go back and talk to him again, you might just have the same reaction. Because what we picture is you're making money for him. You're successful. You're solving his problems. He's happy at his board because he's got someone taking care of this north region. And I'm also getting accolades for that because you're doing that for me. Ne? So write him a letter. Set your vision in there. Share your gospel with him because he's going to read that. It's going to seeds that you're sowing. So some night he's going to work late and he's going to take that letter again and he's going to talk to him. And maybe, just maybe, he repents and he gives his heart to Jesus, or he just says, look, I know I've made some mistakes and I'm going to change. So, and then obviously what one of the team members says is, we've got those ladies in front of the office that ran away. Go back to them and say, you know what, I actually love the boss. There's nothing between us. Because they'll just badmouth him again, because that's his character. So try and bring peace to that situation. Did I miss anything?
Wow.
Go for it.
Any other group brave enough to try and top that? I think we've reached consensus that we're ready for the answer. Wouter, how did it play out?
Wow, I would have loved that advice at the time. Uh, I I had some emotional maturity, so I did want to smack him, but he was a big guy. So I also had some sense about me not to do it. Um, yeah, I did realize that my future and vision wasn't his, and that to a degree, the person that I know, he was most probably, and still is most probably, the person that's got, in terms of business savvy, one of the guys that I respected the most. So he did one thing right in that session. He asked me to go talk to his 2IC, and he sent me out the door with a couple of more words that I had to go dig up in ask people what did it mean, because I really, coming from the Free State, some of them just went straight over my head. As Ruan said, you use some of those words and not even self-defense. So his 2RC was the humblest, wonderful person, and he gave me the best advice I ever got. He simply looked at me and he said to me, if you had to make a choice whether to stay or leave, just want to ask you one question. What would be the best for you and your family? And that's the choice you need to make. And then he said to me, what's your choice? So that clarified everything in an instant. And I knew what the choice was, and I was going to go. Whilst I was talking to him, he phoned down to this guy who ended up being, up until 2 years ago, the joint CEO of the Standard Bank Group. So he eventually climbed to those, and I could hear him shouting and screaming and asking whether he talked some sense into me. And the guy very calmly said yes. And he said, so is he staying? And I could hear him shout over the phone. No cell phones. It was one of those that you could just hold away. And he said, no, he's going. And I could hear him go off again. I've applied that lesson that I learned that day. Every time in my career, I've managed thousands of people that would come to me with a dream and a vision. And I've always just asked them that very same question. Forget about me and our business and wherever you would be going. What would be the best for you and your family? Because I really believe that ultimately that's who we serve in the first instance when we're in business and when we work, as our immediate family and then the extension of that.
Being a servant leader at home and leading your family. So to you, what does it mean to be a servant leader? Any words of wisdom you can share with us on the topic of humility? Is it important in the business world?
After listening to Pastor Neville, no, I've got no words of wisdom to give you. I think he said it. He said it all. Yeah, I think it's, as a leader, it's tough. I mean, it's that I can tell you. It's because a servant leader, I think it's a descriptive word that leading is almost like kind of a oxymoron. It's kind of the opposite of servanthood in certain instances, unless we look at the Bible. Because we don't, in the world, I think the world that we live in business, you read the Steve Jobs, and I'm a massive Apple fan, and you read how he managed his businesses, and that's kind of examples that we get. And I think there's very few servant leader examples in the world that we live in from a business perspective. But I think serving, to me, and humility is that ability to be able to take one step back. But also, when we started our business, the very first thing we defined was our core purpose, because I really believed that we need to have a vision that extended beyond ourselves. And it was, to me, it was so big that I knew we couldn't achieve that. And I believed that was one way of serving, is that it's something outside of us that if we had to achieve success, people wouldn't point to us and say, you were successful. They would say it was so big. We started the first version of it in 2009. I had 3 financial planners, so that's when I left Discovery. I had 3 financial planners, a PA, financial manager, and myself. I appointed myself as the CEO because it sounded cool. And then when I shared this wonderful vision of ours, our core purpose, 2 advisors left. So we didn't have a great start to the business. They couldn't buy into the vision, which today I know was a wonderful thing, because if you can't buy into the vision, I suppose as a servant leader, you need to be able to point the vision and have people follow that, not you. Because if you build a business around you, it's ego-driven, and I made those mistakes, make no mistake. So I think we learn from our mistakes, or hopefully we do, because mistakes are kind of expensive. I always say to guys that come for a little bit of counseling and guidance and maybe a mentorship, I just say to them, listen, look at someone that's done it before you and just go ask them. They will share those ideas. But ask them what the mistakes have been that they've made, because I think that's where we learn the most. Because mistakes can be expensive financially, emotionally, relationship-wise. We pay dearly for those. And to me, in my life, I suppose it's always been to say that I could learn from the cleaner in our business, and I do, and I could learn from, I suppose, the guy that's got the most clout in our business. And I need to always be open to that and have a ear. I love people. I mean, I'm a people's person, and I've always realized that business, irrespective of what you're in, is about the people. It's not about the product. It's not what you do and how you do it. We started our business in 2009. For those of you that can remember, it was the second biggest recession. Found a great friend of mine, kind of a counselor and guiding me through processes. And I shared this wonderful idea that I was going to start a business. And his first words to me was, "Are you nuts?" Not exactly the kind of encouragement I wanted. And he then said to me, "Do you know where we are, the economic climate?" I said, "Yes." I mean, he said, "No one starts a business in a recession." I said, "No one." He says, "No one." I said, "Well, maybe if I start one, I'll be successful because I'll have no competition." So I've learned a lot in those years. But I think serving people for me is not being about you. You can lead with a vision, but for people to follow, you need to have an underpin of values. When we started the business, one of our values that we clearly articulate, only 6 of them, but one of our values was love, serve, and remember. And love is, we need to love the people around us. Serve is that as we do business in the community, we need to leave a lasting legacy in the community, and that's to plow back into that community, whether it's financial, emotionally, spiritually, relationship-wise. And remember, every single day we need to remind ourselves of our purpose as to what we do.
Do you believe that one can be called for business? Is it only the pastors called for that type of ministry, or can we be called for ministry in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. I struggled, at a time with questioning the Lord as to what's my purpose in life. And at the time I did the 2 degrees, I went on to do a couple more. So I was really trained in the financial environment, and I got this answer through various resources and studying the Bible that my ground that I needed to plow was in the financial services environment. I wrote a very small book, once again, because writing a book, an English book, if you're Afrikaans, and as you have woordeboek langs jou oophou, you can't write a thick book. You need to start small. And the book's title was The Solomon Factor, and it really referred to Solomon, and we all know what he was known for. Wise, I doubt that, having had kind of 600 wives and a couple of hundred concubines, I could hardly keep up with one, so I didn't know how that was wise, but we know him as a person of wisdom. And then he asked for wisdom and got money and a lot of other things. And I actually taught a course, and I read the Bible from A to Z to understand finances from a biblical perspective. And Pastor Neville might correct me on this one, but there's about 2,174 verses in the Bible around finances. 40%.
I think it's 2,175.
Okay, could be. I could have missed one. Now, in the context of love and forgiveness and a lot of these, there's about 300 or 500 verses around that. So in my mind, finances from a biblical perspective, I believed, was one of the cornerstones of us being disciples. And being in the financial services environment, I realized that I wasn't taught finances at home. It wasn't because my mom wanted to pull a fast one on me. She just didn't know. I don't know about you, but I wasn't taught finances at school. I wasn't taught finances in church. And even though I did a BCom degree with many other things, I wasn't taught finances in my degree. And I wasn't taught that in the financial institutions that I worked for. And I realized that for me to serve people, that's exactly where I could do it. I couldn't be a great pastor, but I could be a great business leader in my environment that God gave me, I believe, a talent. You can develop that. It's skills. You're not born a business person. That's the beauty, is you can acquire the skills. It just depends on where you believe you've got a true purpose to serve people.
Is it all doom and gloom out there? If we read the financial, indicators and where we are currently, should we pack our bags? Should we immigrate? Or do you have hope for our country and continent?
It's tough out there. I mean, let's not just ignore the facts. But I mean, if you think about hope, we can only hope in terms of what we believe in. And I believe that we serve a God of abundance. And that's not reserved for certain countries or certain people. I believe God has got abundance in place for South Africa. I have the opportunity to work anywhere in the world. I choose to be here. And I continue to choose to be here because I truly believe that we have wonderful people. I mean, look at the people sitting around here. We've got a reflection of South Africa. You see, if we talk about the economy, we forget about the fact that you and I have no control over the global or the macro economy in South Africa. But we have 100% control over our economy because each of us represent an economy, whether it's you individually as a family or a household, or you as a company or a manager or a leader within the company. I believe you and I can play those small little steps. You will remember the story, but a small boy walking down the beach, and there's thousands of starfish that washed up ashore. And he walks down and he picks up a starfish and throws one back in the ocean. And the old lady walks up to him and she says to him, listen, you're wasting your time. There's thousands of them. You're not going to be able to save them. And he bends down and picks one up and he throws it back into the sea. And he says, I just saved that one. You see, if you and I mean, Pastor Neville spoke about the dash, is that if you walk into a cemetery, I mean, though, you look at those tombstones, there's various dates. We don't pick the first one. Our parents kind of picked it when they made a choice about 9 months before that date. And in most instances, we don't pick the end date, but we pick what we do with the dash. And you see, when we go, the only reflection of the true worth of your dash is left in the people behind. And that's why I'd rather speak hope. I'd rather speak abundance than try and stick and deal with things that I have no control over around the politics and the individuals and corruption. Because guess what? It's not just South Africa. You will go find that in any place that you want to. I have a true view that our country is unique. I have the privilege to travel around the world. The best thing about traveling around the world is coming home. South Africa. Not just the place, but the people and the difference I believe we can make in the world.
Yeah, great. Did you guys enjoy that? If my lovely wife won't mind to come and walk around with a roaming mic for us again, we perhaps have a few minutes to allow for one or two questions you might have for Wouter while he's here. You know, maybe equities, bonds, gold, you know, that type of... I don't know if he's allowed to give investment advice here, but maybe related to the topic. Any questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Wouter. That was inspiring. I've asked this question to a lot of people, but you've climbed the corporate ladder, everything. How would you define success in one single sentence?
Success is a happy wife. Happy wife, happy life. Success is living your true purpose that God created you to truly live without fear for challenge, failure. Because in success, we've got to face failure. And I think sometimes people forget about that context of failing forward. So to me, it really is about living your true purpose, understanding what you're born to do, and do it. You don't have to live your passion in your work environment. I don't believe that's always necessary. but you can live out your passion in the way that you deal with people. There's tough environments in anything that we do, and I think true success is making a difference in whatever form of fashion you chose to do in the people around you. And I think that's where the context of servant leadership truly comes to fruition, is that if you're able to serve irrespective, God will look down on you and see you as a success, and not in the worldly terms. Success is having true wealth, and that's everything money can't buy.
Wouter, I always ask people who've succeeded, what, if you had to 1, 2, or 3, the biggest mistakes you made? Because I want to learn from somebody's mistakes.
I think the first mistake I made was thinking that creating wealth as a business owner in terms of a bank balance would make a difference in terms of the way that I felt. Coming back, and my biggest mistake I made in life, but it was a good one, is to have this dream to buy a Porsche. The reason why I say it was a mistake, because it was done for all the wrong reasons, not the wrong car. It's a beautiful car. Because I thought people would look at me differently. Until I sat in the car for the very, very first time and realized that nothing outside of me will truly make a difference. It won't change me. Car won't change me. A big house won't change me. And I suppose I attached my sense of belonging and wealth to things outside of me. Whether it's your wife or kids or work or your bank balance, the car that you drive, that won't change you. So that was the first mistake I made, was trying to think that if you achieve more, you've got a bigger salary or a bigger title, that will give you more success in life. Because I chased those things for various reasons. I suppose the other biggest mistake I made was to think that I loved my family by giving them these things. And love is never in the form of any materialistic things. And we are in a tough environment because as a generation, we are wealthier than our parents, as they were wealthier than their parents. The challenge that you and I face is that our kids will be the first generation that will be poorer than what we are. It's kind of scary if we don't change that status quo. So, but that's just from a wealth perspective, the way that we look at things, unless we change people's mindsets. So for me, it was to understand that the concept that I just shared, there's that wealth is truly everything that you cannot buy with money. Because you can buy a lot of things. You can buy politicians with money. You can buy a country almost with money. I mean, that's what happened in our... So we need to understand that, and that's the message that we need to share. Maybe just the last thing is that there's power in words. You see, if I say I believe in the future of South Africa, I need to prove it, but I need to prove it to the closest people to me, and the first point of view is my kids. I was a very aggressive driver. Now, if you drive a Porsche, you kind of become an aggressive driver because the car can do certain things. But I had to realize that if I had to vocalize my frustration around the fact that taxi drivers in South Africa have complete different rules, road rules. I mean, because they do. I don't know if you know that they take a different license. You can cut off cars, and you can do. Until I realized that, I kind of didn't deal with it well. Until I realized that, you know what, every word I say is an example to my kids in the back of my car, and I need to start being very careful. So I've made a lot of mistakes in saying the wrong things in front of the people that I care about the most. Yet I preach to them in terms of the view that I have of this beautiful country, but I don't show it. I don't tell it. And we need to start being very careful as to what we say to those people that's closest to us, that's not in this room, that can testify, and they start living our life that we tell them to do, not that we show them.
You mentioned in your younger years that you weren't doing too well with maths and stuff like that. How did it change over when you became older? Did you just apply yourself better? Did you have a more conducive studying environment?
So
how did you rise to the top every time? Were you diligent?
the reality is that whatever you believe, you'll achieve. So if you believe that you're poor at maths, you're right. I mean, I think Henry Ford said it. So the fact of the matter is I needed to change my belief system. Because we are amazing people. I read a book a day, as an example. So I chose to start educating myself. I think in terms of if you want a career, go do formal studies. If you truly want to excel as a business leader, you need to do what you're doing right now. You need to invest in the biggest asset that you have, and that's you. So I started doing that. I devoured books. If you come and visit me at my office, I've got thousands of books that I've read. And a lot of people say, how do you read a book a day? It's quite simple. You take a speed reading course. I read at 5,000 words a minute. You need to be highly intelligent to do that. I'm just joking. You see, it's a skill set that we can teach people. The average South African reads at 382 words a minute with 60% recall factor. At 5,000 words per minute, it takes me about 15 minutes to read a 300-page book. And I've got around about 80% recall because our brains were built to do it. God created us this way. It's not because I'm smart or anything. If you can read, you can speed read. It means you can acquire knowledge at a rate of 10 times the average person out there. And it's skill sets that we need to teach ourselves and our kids. It's habits. It's things that you start doing every single day. Marathon athletes don't get up and go run a marathon on a Saturday. Business people don't get up with a great idea and have a successful business tomorrow. It's the very small things that we do every day that makes it count.
You see, I told you guys I have intelligent friends. So they're all wondering about this. I could see the doubt and the question marks and so on. A book a day. I mean, that's just incredible. That hunger to still learn, to still develop, to still grow. I think it's a great example. Looks like Zeralda doesn't believe that 5,000 words a minute. She says it's impossible. That's a start. Baby steps, Zeralda. I was blessed that you guys enjoy that. Practical stories. We could see the humility. We could learn from those mistakes and the practical lessons. Would you join me in thanking Wouter Snyman for sharing?